And now, here is your pandemic news report. Welcome back, everybody, to the pandemic news report. And a lot of you guys know or already knew that Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, also known as Meta, if I'm not mistaken, y'all know that he pretty much confessed and confirmed that he was being forced, some say, or maybe he said he was being forced, maybe tricked, maybe pressured into folding under the Biden and Harris administration to do a lot of censorship in regards to a lot of people who were posting content that was opposite of what they was putting out in the mainstream, trying to push in everybody's brain. And so you might have heard that, but do you know the details? Do you know about the details of this thing? Well, we're going to get into the details today and break it down a little bit more as to what was going on and what was going on behind the scenes. All right. So let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. All right. The AFL exposes internal Facebook documents used for training CDC employees on censoring the public. All right. So, American conservative organization America First Legal, AFL, recently revealed that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also known as the CDC, used Facebook onboarding documents to train CDC employees on how to censor Wuhan coronavirus, COVID-19, and vaccine misinformation. All right, so if it's misinformation, why would they censor it as opposed to exposing the misinformation? But notice how they putting it, because they still trying to make it seem as though people were putting out misinformation. But we all know, and we're going to continue to let you guys know in future news reports, that a lot of people who were going online and had alternative information from the one they was trying to publicly put out there in the mainstream, that these folks were actually right. And also that the people who decided not to get vaccinated was also on to something as well. All right. So these documents show the architecture behind the systems that political appointees and governmental bureaucrats used to unconstitutionally censor the free speech of Americans online. AFL Director Gene Hamilton said in a statement, "The right to speak, to even question authority, is so fundamental to our national identity, yet in the name of a public health crisis, Biden administration officials worked with major companies to silence dissent." All right. So, I mean, it only makes sense because when you look at it, before we go on, even when people trust heavily on science and the scientific method, right? And part of being science and part of actually learning, because going to school is not the only way to learn. You can also learn through observation and also learn through questioning. All right. Whether you get the right answer or the wrong answer. All right. So questioning is scientific. So it only makes sense that people would question authorities on this whole pandemic situation. But they didn't want people questioning. They just wanted things done the way they wanted to get done. Right. And they just wanted to maybe infect the people's minds to think and move a certain way. So if you sit down, before I move into any this further, if you sit down and really think about what took place and really look at how this whole pandemic and taking the vaccines and the stuff that was going on was being pushed, you can see how they had how the tactics they used to control millions of people across the world to do what they wanted them to do. Now, some people think that when you tell them that, yeah, you can be controlled to do certain things, and people will sit up here and say, no, I ain't, no, you can't. No, but yet, a lot of people were controlled to take that vaccine. They was programmed and manipulated into doing so. Now, think about that and marinate on that for a minute, all right, as we continue to go on. So, according to Hamilton, the people need to review these documents and understand just how far leaders in Washington went to violate the First Amendment to the Constitution. All right, excuse me. Facebook trained CDC staff on how to use the Facebook platforms, government reporting system. Facebook trained. When they say Facebook, it's Mark Zuckerberg is part of that, because I'm sure he had to get some approval, approve it, what have you. That's what I mean, approving. So they're using the word Facebook, but Facebook trained, or Mark Zuckerberg and his peoples trained the CDC staff on how to use the platform's government reporting system. As per the litigation, Facebook created a new end-to-end workflow, which is a streamlined process to make it easy for the government to censor the American people. All right. The social media platform only gave access to approved government and law enforcement personnel, whoever they wanted to approve. That platform, the Facebook platform, gave access to approved government and law enforcement personnel. They were assigned to submit links for removal from Facebook. All right. The said portal dramatically increased the efficiency of the censorship machine by allowing up to 20 links at a time to be referred for censoring. Each censorship request automatically generated a ticket number so that the government could track if Facebook complied with its censorship demands. The newly revealed documents further show how Facebook explained precisely what content it would remove and what it needed from the CDC to censor certain narratives within the bounds of its community standards. According to the workers, they only removed information deemed false by public health authorities, despite the many examples of these authorities later being proven wrong. All right. I'm going to read that one again. According to the workers, they only removed information that was deemed false by public health authorities. All right. Nobody decided to do any further research to look at alternative health officials and health authorities. They just went by the public health authorities, despite many examples of these authorities later being proven wrong. All right. Facebook's policy was to censor statements that made false claims about masks. And we all know the situation about masks now. Old Fauci done folded it and came up with some other comment claiming he didn't put that out there. But Facebook's policy was to censor statements that made false claims about masks, now shown to have been nearly useless, making those statements true, which discouraged social distancing, all right, now known to have been fabricated by Dr. Anthony Fauci, former White House chief medical advisor. If any individual was a repeat offender of the government's ever-shifting determinations on misinformation, their accounts reach would be reduced or removed from their site altogether. And a lot of us experienced that when we had our doubts about this whole thing, especially when it came to the vaccine. And we knew that it takes way longer to put something together and get test trials done to make sure these quote unquote vaccines, we're saying vaccines, but we're finding out it's a little bit more than just a vaccine. but we'll just use the word because that's what they're using. But keep in mind, we have come up with, we found some information that is telling otherwise. It's more than just the vaccine. But yeah, so this is crazy. This is real crazy. If an individual was a repeat offender, again, of the government's ever shifting determinations on misinformation, their account's reach would be reduced or removed from their site altogether. So, again, a lot of us had our accounts looking like one or two people only seen our stuff, or it was Facebook, and then YouTube was involved in this too, and they should be held responsible as well. They're being really held to be kept quiet. Nothing's being said too much about YouTube, which makes me wonder who they are really, the people who are running it are in bed with, but YouTube and Facebook were two of the sites where a lot of people posted information that contradicted what the mainstream news and the governmental public officials and doctors like Anthony Fauci were putting out. All right. So a lot of people experienced that they were getting reduced reach on their accounts. And then, yeah, there were some people who were removed. Myself, I remember putting something out on a podcast, and one was moved altogether. And then the other one I contested. And then YouTube, I don't know, it was the algorithms or the YouTube police, so to speak, found out that it wasn't. And this was the comment that they put. They decided not to remove it. And they said it turned out it wasn't as bad as they thought. Whatever that's supposed to mean. Right? But now, when we look back, those videos I put out on the podcast channel turned out to be factual. All right. So let's move on. AFL also pointed out that the lawsuit exposed the United Kingdom's influence on the Biden-Harris administration's censorship policy and Meta, Facebook's parent company. CEO Mark Zuckerberg's admission that Facebook only engaged in censorship after extreme pressure from the current U.S. regime. All right. Zuckerberg regretted caving into Biden-Harris admin pressure to censor content. Back in August, Zuckerberg told the House Judiciary Committee that he regretted colluding with the federal government when he faced significant pressure to censor content on Facebook and Instagram. In a letter to the committee's chairman, Jim Jordan, which is a Republican of Ohio, he said, "I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. We're ready to push back if something like this happens again." The letter refers specifically to the widespread suppression of contrarian viewpoints relating to COVID-19. Federal bureaucrats pushed social media platforms to take down content. I'm going to say that one again. Federal bureaucrats pushed social media platforms to take down content that could make people hesitate to submit. Notice the wording, to submit to the vaccine mandate. President Joe Biden accused Zuckerberg on his moderators of, quote, killing people if they failed to moderate vaccine skeptical content more aggressively. But like I said, now we're finding out, and the information has come out, that the vaccine skeptical content, the people who created vaccine skeptical content, were on point. But see, notice you don't hear too much being said about this whole pandemic and the vaccine situations anymore. It's being kept quiet, but it's out. You just have to find the information, which is what we'll do here on the Pandemic News Report. All right. So in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, wrote Zuckerberg. it was revealed that Zuckerberg's people and CDC officials exchanged emails where it was disclosed that the government took a heavy hand in suppressing content. The CDC also took the position that expressing skepticism about vaccinating children was a form of misinformation and should be policed, reports indicated. Now, I'm going to read that one again. Let this sink in. The CDC also took the position that expressing skepticism about vaccinating children was a form of misinformation and should be policed, reports indicated. So just because somebody was skeptical about giving children a vaccine, or this particular vaccine regarding COVID-19, just to being skeptical about doing that, which is what you're supposed to be as a parent. Some doctors probably were that way, and some other doctors weren't. They just folded and went along with the get along gang. But just because you had an issue about, well, I don't know about you giving this to my kids, my children, you was deemed to be putting out, that was a form of misinformation. Even though it didn't express being true or false, you just had concerns about giving your child a vaccine such as this regarding to the pandemic. They said that was a form of misinformation. You see how these folks run and how they operate, how they move? Get wise on this information, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So Zuckerberg also exposed that the Federal Bureau of Investigation warned him about Russian attempts to sow chaos on social media by releasing a fake story about the Biden family just before the 2020 election. This warning motivated Facebook to take action against the New York Post's Hunter Biden laptop story when it was published in October 2020, which of course turned out to be true as well. We've changed our policies and processes to make sure this doesn't happen again, Zuckerberg further vowed. All right. So those are the details, a little bit more in-depth details of this whole situation and how it went down. Basically, Mark Zuckerberg folded. It turned out that a lot of people who had, that were skeptics of the vaccine and all the stuff going on and the mask and all that, now turned out to be telling the truth, factual. They were right about their concerns. They were right about their observations, their thoughts. And you still to this day would not know this unless we report it and others who are brave enough and bold enough to report it. And the social media platforms that will allow you to continue to put it out and not continue to fold, even though it's truthful now, what we're reporting and what we've been reporting. If social media platforms still suppress this information, you know what it is now, because the truth is coming out. And as the truth has actually been opposite of what they've been saying for the last 2 to 3 years. All right. So you guys let us know what you think about this one. Put it in the comments. Be sure to share it with people. All right. Share it with your family. Sit down with your family and go over these videos and become a lot more knowledgeable, a lot more informed, and start getting wise on the information that you received here at the Pandemic News Report. So with that being said, we appreciate y'all. We will be back with some more Pandemic News Report information in the near future. So with that being said, this is the Pandemic News Report. We'll check y'all out later. Peace. And now, here is your Pandemic News Report.